And as time went on and I've evolved, what I realized changing the consciousness about cancer, it has nothing to do with a person's, it doesn't have anything to do with Western or alternative. It has to do with what is my relationship with cancer? And can I walk through this with grace?
That is Renee Meyers, my dear friend, and one of the most courageous and beautiful women I've known. Great friend. How long have I known you?
Since, I think...
2006.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would have been the fall, winter of 2006.
Yeah.
Because I ran the Chicago Marathon.
Yep.
And Jamie and I were having a Christmas party.
Oh, yeah.
And you and Wes came over to the apartment, and I met you guys for the first time.
What Wes and I remember about that meeting is you were talking about running, and he used to always run, and you suggested you guys train for a marathon together, and he goes, well, that doesn't sound too repulsive.
Yeah, I think
it was either repulsive or
yeah.
I think it was repulsive.
It was like, yeah, well, that'll get you up in the morning. and magically he called me like a day or two later and said, I think I'm in. And we ran
for years.
Oh yeah, I think we did 8 or 9 marathons together. Yeah. So
yeah.
And along the way, a lot of life has happened. So, and we've created life along the way.
Yeah, and thanks for interviewing me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. One of the things, as we were talking earlier, one of the things I'm interested in is, there are powerful stories that exist in people that may not be known by the world at this point. But there are what we would refer to as ordinary people with extraordinary stories and life experience. And frankly, you are one of those people in my world that circle in, my orbit, that I wanted to have the opportunity to sit down and have a conversation and share your life and your experience with people that are going to tune in. So, right now, where would you like to begin?
Well, that's a good question.
It might not be bad to go back and capture what we were talking about before we turned the recording on. That you're arriving at really getting why you're here.
Yes. So I was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2009. And I treated it alternatively for a while, and eventually had a lumpectomy. Was called cancer-free, and then a few years later, it came back in the exact same spot. I did some things alternatively again. Quite frankly, in a lot of ways, was in denial about what was going on, and finally, in 2015, I went in with extreme back pain, thinking I had a slipped disc, to find out that the cancer had metastasized to my bones. Wow. And so I was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer a year ago, April, and ended up, at that point, I actually had said to my husband, Wes, I just want to die. I didn't want to live. And he found an oncologist for me. I never thought I would go Western medicine. I was so against Western medicine completely.
Yeah. Why?
Because I've always been alternative health-wise for 20 years, which goes back to my son's ear 25 years. Because when my son was born, he had ear infections for the first year of his life. Going to traditional doctors didn't get rid of them. And I found an alternative practitioner, and changing his diet and doing some other things, he never had another ear infection. And so 25 years ago, I was going to a natural path to traditional Chinese medicine and always had success. And I didn't see a reason to stop that just because I had been diagnosed with cancer. And I also took the spiritual teaching that all things are possible through love.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to myself, well, how can chemotherapy and radiation be a loving thing to do to my body?
Oh,
And so I
sure.
really felt like the loving thing was to find gentle things to heal it. And I had some success, um, but not in the long term. And so then when 2015 came around, I didn't care whether I was going to live or not. So when an oncologist said, um, I'm going to want you to meet with a radiologist, and he said to me, I don't know how you're going to treat the cancer, but I do know that if we don't radiate two spots that are weight bearing, your ability to walk is in jeopardy. And so when you're faced with that kind of diagnosis, it's very easy to say yes to radiation. I didn't have the luxury of going, I'm going to treat this alternatively and hope these cells die off. It's
Right.
like, so I said yes to radiation, which I never thought I would do. And then when it came to treating the cancer in general, um, I have, in my world, I have a couple spiritual teachers who I knew when they were not as big as they are now. One of them is Matt Kahn, who's now known globally, but I knew him when he was more local. I had a chance to have a meeting with him around the time I was faced with the decision of whether I was going to do chemotherapy or not, which I actually wasn't going to. And what he said to me in that, I had an hour-long meeting with him, and he said, for you, Renee, part of your journey is Western medicine.
Was he speaking? So he was speaking clearly from the sense of guidance. Is that?
Yes, we had
Yeah.
a one-on-one
Okay.
Skype session, and the first thing he said to me in that session was, "It's not your time." He goes, "I know when it's people's time, and it's like you have put yourself in the line to the pearly gates or whatever you." He goes, "And then I'm dragging you back out. It is not your time to go yet."
you you had resigned. You were headed there. You
Yeah,
were
I was in
you
line,
you were ready to
and
ring the
I just
bell.
I just wanted it to go as fast as I could.
Oh wow.
And he
Okay.
says, "It's not your time.
Mm.
You are here to." He was one of three people in that camp. You can call them intuitives, you can call them psychics, that I have talked to over the last few years who have said, "You're here to change the consciousness about cancer." And
Independent of one another.
independent of
These
one
people
another, they
don't
do
know
not
one
know
another.
one another at all. But Matt's, but when he said, "You need to do Western medicine," I got what he was saying, because I I know that we're here as individuals, and every single judgment we have in life is going to come up for review if you want to look at it that way. Because every judgment you have towards an institution, towards an individual, is a is about separation. It's about us versus them. That's no good. That's good. And the universe doesn't work that way. The universe is neutral on everything. We're the ones who make things good or bad. And I had a very negative opinion about Western medicine, and quite frankly, any doctor who was associated with anyone who would have chosen it. And it's no surprise to me that my path was going to go down that road. It's not right for everyone, I get that. And I'm still more alternative than anything. But for me personally, I knew that I was going to have to go into that world because I didn't want to.
Yeah.
I had a
So
judgment about it.
yeah, you were going to have some judgments.
And the best way to get rid of judgments is to be one of them.
Hmm.
And so I did choose chemotherapy last year, and I went through 12 rounds of it. I knew it wasn't going to go away completely, or didn't think it would, but it was a way to shrink it, and then we were going to manage it with doing some other things. But so I did radiation, I did chemotherapy, two things I never thought I was going to do, but it put me in that world and it took away any judgment I had about it. So from a bigger perspective, I got it. I got why I needed to do Western.
Hmm.
And so so being diagnosed with that, going from not wanting to live to those 12 weeks of chemotherapy and the work I was doing personally, I got to a point where I wanted to live, and I
Wow.
really wanted to live a lot. I really had a desire to
so
be
you
here for the first time in my life, actually.
so you had that would be something Jesus would call being born again. I mean, there
Sure,
was something that woke
you,
up like you've
yeah,
never had before.
like I never had before. For most of, I mean, I'm 56. I'm going to be 57 in 3 days.
Yes, you are.
But
Because I'm going to be a
a
little
little
bit
bit
older
older
than
than that,
that in
right?
just a few more days from then.
But I can honestly say, at some level, I'm not sure I really ever enjoyed being here. It was as if I was born, and when I was 2.5 or 3, I almost have memories of kind of going, "Are you kidding me? What? I don't want to be here." And my whole life, I'm not sure I ever embodied me and who I was meant to be until cancer. So I'm now of the so my relationship with cancer went from this thing that is happening to me to this thing that is happening for me.
Hmm.
And cancer used to have a lot of power over me, and it doesn't anymore. And I used to have a lot of fear about it, and I don't anymore. And quite frankly, my numbers went back up, and today I'm back in chemotherapy. So, um, and yet I don't, I mean, I don't know how to put it other than I really do believe that I was born and meant to experience this
Hmm.
because, as I said before, those three intuitives who didn't know one another had said, "You're here to change the consciousness about cancer." And I used to think 7 years ago that I was supposed to treat this alternatively and show the world that it can be done alternatively, and look at me and look at alternative medicine.
Hmm.
And had that all worked, it would have kept me in such judgment about those who chose a different path.
Hmm.
And now that I've gone down both paths, what I can say is what I get about how I'm supposed to change consciousness about cancer, it's through my relationship with it. Can I be walking through this with grace? Can I come from a place of being empowered? Can I come from a place of having no fear about it? And and if I can do that, then other people who are faced with cancer can go, "Hey, I never thought about it that way. I never thought about cancer as maybe what it can do for me rather than what it's doing to me." Or maybe no one ever even knows who I am, but the fact that I'm choosing to be with cancer from what I would call a, more of the bigger spiritual picture,
Hmm.
because we're all connected, it's changing the consciousness about it. And over the last 18 months, some of the things I've done to get to this point are I may die. And if there's one thing I think that people in our countries for sure, they know they're going to, but they act like they don't
Right.
know. It's just sometime in the future.
Right.
But we act like we aren't going to die.
Yeah.
But
There's such a huge like blind spot there. Our culture, we won't even look at it out the corner of our eye, so to speak. It just is
yeah,
not. We are not going to view that.
it's like if instead of when.
Right.
That's how, like, if I
Yeah.
die.
If I
No,
die.
it's when you die.
Right.
And one of the things that's been really powerful for me is to go, okay, I may die. So what does that mean? What does that look like? What does it mean to not be here? And um, fortunately, the spiritual beliefs I have make that an easier contemplation because of the eternal nature of who we are.
Hmm.
Energy doesn't die, it just changes form, and we're nothing but energy.
Right.
So I get that I've been here many times, can come back, and that all of this is in this lifetime is a set of experiences that are meant to evolve my soul, if that's how I choose to look at life. And
Hmm.
that's how I do choose to look at life. So for cancer, for me, I get that I was born, and this thing that I have been dealing with has been the thing that has evolved my soul to the point where today I can honestly say I like and love myself. And by liking and loving myself, it means I can like and love everybody else.
Yeah.
So I am at a place of unconditional love, and I never would have gotten there if it wasn't for cancer.
Yeah.
So how can I be regretful that I got it?
Yeah.
I'm not. And
Yeah.
I'm still dealing with it. But it has been the catalyst for who I have become. And I wouldn't have gotten there without it, because it made me look at things I did not want to look at. So, and today, the past year, my numbers have gone up. And so in July, my oncologist said to me, which is another huge thing that I think people should be very aware of. She said, Renee, this isn't curable. And I looked at her and I thought, okay, then you've just set me free.
Wow. Okay, so dig a little deeper. Let's unwrap that one a little bit.
Because if she said this isn't curable, then the world is open to me for what I want to do and what all that means. And so on the first note, what I will say about that is that our beliefs create our reality. It's not like we look at reality and then form beliefs. None of us were born with them. We were born, and every single belief and value we have was because of something else. It's because of our family. It's because of the area of the country we live in. It's because of the culture we live in. Every single belief we have, we chose or took it on because it allowed us to survive easier, however you want to say it. And doctors, I don't think, realize how much power they have with patients when they make proclamations like that, because you're in a co-creative relationship. And we think doctors are so smart because they said, they told my friend he had 6 months to live, and by George, he did die at 6 months. Those doctors are so smart. Or there's another friend told me about when she had gone to a meeting, and one of the other participants there said, yeah, my doctor gave me 3 weeks. And sure enough, he died 3 weeks later. And people went, their response is, wow, that doctor is so smart. But what if the doctor's participating in a reality making? And I've got plenty of books that talk about just that in terms of doctor. Anyway, that doesn't matter. But the point of it is, is that when she said that, I said, I have to have a different doctor, because she's participating in my potential.
Right.
And so when she said that, I chose to look around, because one thing I have felt from day one is I am supposed to heal from this. And that's never, ever changed, that I'm supposed to heal from this. And so when she said this isn't curable, I started looking around, things in Mexico, in Germany. My naturopath had said there are some things that you can do, that you can purchase in Canada and do here. And she goes, but there's this doctor I know in Seattle, and his name's Dr. Chu, and he's an out-of-the-box Western medicine doctor. And so Wes and I scheduled an appointment with him. And I'll tell you right off the bat, I loved it before I even met him, because you walk into his office and there's the name on the wall, and it says Life Spring Cancer Treatment Center. Through God, all things are possible. And I juxtaposed that with what my other oncologist said, and I just smiled. And then I went to this down the side hallway and sat, and they were going to take my vitals, and I look up, and there's this little painting a patient had done that said, "You are loved."
Oh, wow.
And I just smiled again. And then when we finally met with Dr. Chu, one of the first things he said was, I don't look at stage 4 cancer as incurable. I look at it as you have more cancer. And I thought that, and he believes he can help anybody. And there are pancreatic cancer patients I have met who, one the other day was diagnosed 10 years ago with pancreatic cancer and given 45 days to live, and she found Dr. Chu and she's still here 10 years later.
Wow.
And so we met him, so I had all of this information on what to do, and I fortunately have a practitioner who can muscle test what is good and not good for you. And I don't know how many of your listeners know about muscle testing, but the premise behind it is you can put anything in the palm of your hand, be it sugar or sweetener or whatever, and you can, and your body knows what's good for it or not. And basically you can test whether your body goes strong to this substance or weak.
Yep. I've had the experience myself, and I even with like nutritional supplements, they're at one level or at one dosage. If your body may be strong, you put 2 more capsules in your hand and you
your
go
body weak. Yep,
and
exactly.
Yeah.
And so, doctors and naturopath, they'll tell everybody, take 2 of these or whatever, but we're all different.
Yeah, who knows?
So if you have somebody you can go to who muscle tests, it can actually tell you, hey, this is the best dose, or even though everybody takes curcumin, your body says it doesn't want it. Okay. Right. So I have a practitioner, and I went to her with all of the stuff, Mexico, Germany, Dr. Chu, all of these things. And it's interesting to me that she said, well, Renee, because she's alternative too, she goes, muscle testing says Dr. Chu's protocol puts your body in a healing state. Every other one of these, it stresses your body out.
Okay, how was that for you? Because
well,
I mean, you were willing to like surrender to Western medicine with your other oncologist, and then you were exploring alternative methods, and you're redirected through your own body
back to Western medicine.
Interesting. How did that land for you? Did you resist it at all, or did you just say thank you?
Well, fortunately, I feel very strongly about muscle testing, and she's a very good practitioner for it. But when she said it, it's like resistance is too strong of a word, but it's still in that category, because again, I've done Western, but it's not my go-to, and I still have some preconceived notions about how bad chemotherapy is for you. Mm-hmm. But again, one of the back to one of the intuitives I've met or talked to, she said, Renee, your body doesn't respond to chemo like most people's body. It's okay. Mm-hmm. And I realized that I needed to let go of my own judgments about chemotherapy. I mean, to be faced with that, my body was saying, Renee, chemotherapy is going to help us. You go down to Mexico or to Germany, and they may be not as harsh on the body, but they stress me out. And it's like, okay, body, I'm going to listen. And so I chose Dr. Chu's route for this next phase of what I'm going through. And fortunately, I just had a marker taken, and the cancer's going, my marker's down, which says it's working. So that's where I am today as far as this whole process. And I mean, it's been a journey, but you talked about disquiet, and I can say, even though there's still cancer in my body, I'm not a disquieted person.
No, I get that. Just sitting with you.
Yeah.
The times that we've been together over the past months, you're pretty quiet.
Yeah.
Yeah, you really are.
Yeah.
Which leads me to want to inquire, you've described your path pretty well, how you got there. What's going on in your internal world? How
my soul level?
Exactly. What's happening?
How did I get quiet?
Yeah, how did you get quiet? How did you go from the resistance to everything you're doing now to like in a place of surrender, acceptance, and agreement with everything?
So I've always been on a spiritual path.
Do you remember when that began? Because as I recall, you were raised. Your father was a very intellectual.
He was a professor.
Right. He was a professor,
Hmm.
and were you
We never went to church.
okay?
Well, this is what's fascinating too. So we never went to church. I was confirmed Methodist.
Okay.
So for a year I went because I
Yeah.
had to go to
Right.
get
Yeah.
confirmed.
Yeah.
Then I never stepped foot in the church again. But and I always thought my dad was anti-spiritual. Okay, and my mom would have labeled him that. She probably would have said my dad was an agnostic, and I believed that up until about 10 years ago. And I did, and I don't have the kind of relationship with my parents where you tell them your deepest.
Right.
So it just makes them uncomfortable.
Right.
But I decided to one time. But while my dad was still alive, we were sitting in his den, and he has this where he sat in this Barcalounger kind of chair. And what he faced was all of these bookshelves with all of his books. And most of them, because he was a psychology professor, were all academic.
Right.
And I was telling him, I decided to tell him I meditated. I just decided to tell him about my spiritual background. And he's listened to me and he goes, he wasn't real mobile then, so he wasn't going to get up and go grab a book for me. But he looks at me and goes, you see that shelf up there? He goes, that's my interest in it. In all things spirit, he meditated. He had books up there that had to do with what was his name? Oh my gosh, it was the same teacher I was following at the time. I can't remember his name, but anyway, he had
Not Ken Wilber or
oh
someone
no,
like
because
that.
these books were they were the 70s.
Oh wow.
So this was in the 70s, and so now I looked at him as I'm reading those titles, and I go, Dad, these are like the grandparents of the books I read now. So he had Sufism up there.
Yeah, love it. Okay.
Yep,
Yeah.
and he had energy. There was a book on energy stuff. That he even had palm reading up there. He had all of these books. In fact, when my dad died and my mom said, "Whatever books you want, take." I took some of those books and I have them with me now. And I go, Dad, I never knew this about you. I go,
Yeah.
we have the same. Now I know where I got my spirituality.
Right.
And I go, why didn't you ever say anything? And his typical sort of psychology professor sort of I don't know, his parental style was not real hands-on. He goes, I just didn't feel like it was my place to influence your beliefs.
Wow.
So I kind of get where that came from. And when you ask where it all started, for some reason, I always flash on this, and I have no idea why. I was probably around 7th grade or something, and my dad's mother, my grandmother, was not a very nice human being.
Mm.
And I don't know why I think this is where it started, but I remember as a young girl going, this is weird. I don't really like her. And that shocked me because you're supposed to love your family.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why I say my spirituality starts there, but when anybody ever asks me that question, that is the memory I flash on. The fact that I didn't like my grandmother, loved her, but didn't like her. Now, why does that start the spiritual path? I have no idea, other than it's a mystery, and maybe then I wanted to explore how that all starts.
Wow.
But
yeah.
I do remember learning to meditate back in the early 90s, but I still had young kids, and but even before that, in 1985, I remember reading Shirley MacLaine's Out on a Limb and a lot of the Seth Speaks kinds
right.
of stuff.
Sure.
Then I had my kids. Everything kind of went on hold, and then it all picked up again probably 15 years ago. So when it came to what the cancer did, it just... so I was meditating, I was going to silent retreats, I was reading a lot of different books. But then in 2015, when I got hit with it had metastasized, there were certain things that happened synchronistically that got me to the place of quiet today. One of them was that call with Matt, where he just said, it's not your time yet. And another was the call I had with Carissa. She was the other intuitive who had said, you've come down here to change the consciousness of cancer and to heal it in your family on your mother's side.
Mm.
Because I was diagnosed with breast cancer. My mother has had ovarian cancer, even though she's still alive. My grandmother died of metastasized lung cancer. She had two sisters that died of different cancers, and that's like the females on my mom's side.
Yeah.
And she said, you've come down here to heal on behalf of all of them. And I've had some experiences in meditations with my ancestors where I feel like I've done that. But she did say, here's some things you need to work on in your healing. And one of them was to deal with my shadow. Some other stuff was to deal with some of the little girl parts of me that were not yet healed.
Test. I think we're still good. I don't
Okay.
know what that was.
Was it me? Okay.
Okay.
And so over the past 15 months, well, let me back up. What I've come to realize is that each of us at a soul level is pure divine being. And what keeps us from living from that space, you call it quiet,
Mm-hmm.
what keeps us from living there is our lifetime worth of layers we've put over that to keep ourselves, for lack of a better word, safe, secure. All of those things we did to get love, to get safety, to get security. And a lot of them have to do with those beliefs. A lot of them have to do with strategies that we employed. For me personally, when I was a little girl, about 2.5 to 3 years old, I had a couple of experiences where I said, I'm on my own.
Whoa.
And I'm going to have to take care of myself. And so I developed a very tough, capable, successful facade. There's nothing I couldn't handle. There's nothing, I could easily live on my, be by myself on my own. So I had this facade of capability. That's how I was able to navigate my life. And so each of us has done that, and we have these layers upon layers upon layers that I believe that our life is meant to get rid of those.
Mm-hmm.
You get rid of all of those layers, and what is left is that quiet. It's some people can call it the Christ consciousness, others just can call it divine, others can call it, spirit or whatever it is. But to the degree that you can get rid of those layers, that's what's left. And over the last 18 months, through Matt, through Carissa, and then through this other author I found, Paul Selig, his books in particular, the last 6 months, have been huge in getting rid of those layers. And so what I have been left with is peace. And cancer forced me there.
Yeah. Or it invited you there.
That is a way better word.
You didn't have to go. It didn't.
I didn't.
It didn't force you.
You were right.
You've had an invitation extended to you because you got to choose
how to be with it.
Yeah, you came to that place in the road. You could choose one of several directions, and you've chosen embrace.
Yep.
You've
right.
chosen love. You've chosen, and not only that, Renee. When you said you've transformed cancer from the place of it's doing something to you. It's something that entered your body, and it's doing something to you. It's doing something for you. But it's even beyond that. It's rippling out into the world. It's even beyond you, and that's
changing the consciousness.
Yeah, and so I want to talk a little bit about your blog and that journey. Your writing has been, it's inspired me. I love each of your blogs that come out. I've loved it, And I, even the one not even, but the humorous one, you going to Ireland
Oh,
and,
yeah.
that you just, so you're taking this experience beyond beliefs. You're in the experience of living with cancer. You've embraced that you are here to transform the consciousness regarding it, and you've accepted an invitation and you've said yes to
Yes.
that call. So,
Thank you. Yeah, and it was an invitation.
yeah, yeah, the invitations we get don't. It's not like the party invitations we used to get that request our presence somewhere. They show up, and you have to choose. We get to choose,
Get to
but
choose.
there is an urgency to some of the choices
Yeah.
we get to make.
Well, and here's the other thing about cancer. Cancer is probably the scariest six-letter word for people. It is really, cancer is like, it freaks people out, and I get it. In our society, it doesn't surprise me that you see fighting a battle with cancer, kill cancer, fuck cancer. Sorry for the
Right.
swear word,
Yeah,
but I mean,
that's
you can see that on a shirt. And people, and I used to be in this camp, would think that cancer is not God
mm-hmm.
because of what it can do to us.
Right.
But what I've come to realize is that from God's perspective, this is a temporary life.
Right.
God's interest, if you want to look at it as it's something other than you, God's interest is in your soul and progression. So in my mind, cancer is God, and it's because God's going, what invitation can I extend this person that moves their soul closer to me? And so it can be many different ways. So for me, cancer is not God. Cancer is just as those cells in my body are just as divine as the healthy ones, because they're there getting me closer to God.
You're talking heresy right now, girlfriend.
Oh, I know.
You totally are.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But all I can say is that view
Yeah.
has me quiet.
Yeah.
I'm not fighting this thing in me. Yes, you're going through chemo and that's killing the cells, but it's my relationship with the cells. It's my relationship with chemo. Chemotherapy is God too.
Mm-hmm.
It's like there's nothing that's not. And so this sort of co-creation of the chemotherapy and me and the cells and whatever, it's just moving me along. And everything in our life can be that if we want it to be. Can it get you closer to God, or is it more comfortable for you to stay in the role of a victim?
Yeah.
And I'm not a victim. I view this as it is a way I've gotten closer to God. And how can I not be grateful?
So talk a little bit about, share with us, because in fact, as we've been talking, I was reminded of something that I came across recently, and it's just a way of being in the world, and it begins with be astonished. Just live and be astonished. Pay attention, and then tell other people. So you have been you've been astonished by your own journey and the way that you've walked into where you're at right now, through the door that had cancer over the doorpost, right? You're paying attention, and you're beginning to share with the world. And you've started a blog how long ago, and what compelled you to begin to write about it and to share it and make it public?
Part of my layer, one of those layers, used to be I needed people to see me strong and having my act together.
I would concur with that, having known you
Right.
for as long as I have.
Right.
Yeah, that's
And so even a year ago, it was hard for me to say it had come back.
Mm.
What I really would have preferred is for me to get to a place where all was fine and go, hey, let me tell you what I went through, past tense.
Mm.
But to allow people into my world
Mm.
on a day-to-day basis was very vulnerable.
Yeah.
And I knew this time, back in almost at the year anniversary of when I got the stage 4 diagnosis, that what was being asked of me was to be vulnerable.
Mm.
And the most vulnerable thing I could do was to share this with the world.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to share it with the friends and the people you know who accept you for whatever, but I just felt like what was being asked of me was to be vulnerable more than just my comfort zone.
Had you ever had any other time in your life where vulnerability showed up as like a good idea?
Never.
Or
Are
had
you kidding me?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Vulnerable?
Yeah.
In my family?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, 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 no. Vulnerable didn't get you anywhere.
Yeah.
Like I said, back to 2.5 to 3 years old, I knew I was, yeah.
Yeah. I've been sober for 5 years, and part of what we talk about every AA meeting that I go to, there we read what's called the 9th step promises. And one of the sentences in that is, we shall not regret the past, nor wish to shut the door on it. So that's what brings me to suggest that maybe this invitation wasn't a forced thing at all.
No, it wasn't.
And when we talk, Renee, I don't sense any regret from you. And what I experience from you is vulnerability. It's openness. And
well, thank you.
yeah.
Took a ways to get that invitation.
Yeah.
That's been one of the outcomes of it. Is
Right.
that is vulnerability is a good thing. Openness is a good thing.
Yeah.
And I never knew I could write. I mean, I had a blog a few years ago that was kind of fun, but it surprised me that the writing would flow. But I actually don't ever feel like it's me that's writing them. I just feel like a pen, and it just kind of comes through.
So where let's take just a second, and where will people find that blog?
I have a website. It's www.reneemeyers.com, and Renee is Renee. Meyers is Meyers, and it's on that site.
Okay.
And really what my whole thing about life is the sort of the subtitle on my blog or on my website is The Alchemy and the Odyssey. And really all that means is what you're doing too, and that is that each of us is on an odyssey. And generally most people I met have one big theme in their life that odyssey is. For me it's cancer, for you because it was addiction, for somebody else it might be financially or a divorce. I mean, who knows what it is, but we each have the option of looking at our life as an odyssey, and through that odyssey, the alchemy can happen. And for me, I've seen that in my own life.
Yeah, that's in fact, Wes, your husband, and I were sitting at Urban Coffee here not too long ago, and we were talking about alchemy, and I referred to a Disney story where it's either Sleeping Beauty is put in some room and she's forced to weave straw into gold. And we're talking about this, and I said, yeah, I think it was Sleeping Beauty or whatever. And remember the little golden books?
I don't remember the story as much.
Well, there were a series of books where they told fairy tales in these little books. And so there was this 2-year-old little boy that walked over,
yes, told me about
pulled a book out of this basket.
Yeah.
And he walked over to his dad. His dad looked through it with him for a little bit, and he came and set it down, and I looked at it, and it was the story of Sleeping Beauty.
That's amazing.
And I opened up the page, and there's a little, illustrated picture of Sleeping Beauty on a spinning wheel, weaving straw into gold. And that magic of taking the common
Yep.
the ordinary, the mundane, and that alchemy that takes place, it gets woven into something really precious.
And each of us has that in our life.
Totally.
Each of
Yeah.
us does. And usually it doesn't look very fun to go there and find the gold.
That's
In
right.
fact, you would avoid it at all costs.
Yeah.
But it's there.
Yeah.
It's there if we're willing to turn towards it
Yeah.
instead of away from it.
Yeah.
We're trying to get rid of it.
Exactly. That. It couldn't be better said than that.
Yep.
So, what have been some of the things that have been on your heart that you've shared in your blog that might be great for our listeners to be in touch with right now before they even go to the website?
Boy, that's a good question. I think that the one that comes to mind right now the most is sometimes when I talk to people, they go, "Oh, I don't want to trouble you with my stuff. I mean, you're dealing with cancer." And I say to them, there's not a comparison. There's not a hierarchy. I said, what causes you pain or what causes your fears might be that huge spider on the wall, and mine might be cancer cells, but the fear that we feel in our body is the same. And they can seem like, oh, spiders not, and I know that's a gross comparison,
Sure.
but the point of it is that
for those people that deal with that fear, though,
it's huge.
There was an electric shock that just went through their body just with you mentioning it.
Exactly.
So, of course.
And so I would just invite people to say that if you know someone with cancer, don't treat them with I shouldn't speak for everybody else.
Right.
I never want to be treated with kid gloves because then it makes me almost feel worse. I so enjoy when someone comes over and they share what's going on in their life. A, it makes me feel there's still an intimacy there that and B, I'm out of my own story, and C, I get to be present and hold space for someone when they're going through stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
So that I've realized has become incredibly important to me, is that people just treat me normally. Yeah. I mean, I've dealt with this for a long time now, and if someone has diabetes, they don't go, tell we don't, whether you have cancer or diabetes or whatever, all of us want, don't speak for all of us. I just know that I want to be Renee. I don't want to be Renee Cancer Meyers. I just want to be Renee Meyers.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that's been present in my heart is to still be my friend and share your life with me.
Yeah.
And the other thing I would encourage people is that if you can actually spend time with the idea that what it means to die, you can actually start living.
Yeah.
Because once you face your death, it makes every day so precious.
Yeah.
And until then, sometimes, I mean, I can still get up, on a day and go, man, I feel like crap. But when you actually know and have faced death, it makes every day precious rather than a pain in the ass to live. So I don't know. Those are the two that come to mind right now.
Cool.
Yeah.
Do you, through your blog, are there people reaching out to you that are in their own experience of cancer?
I've had a couple.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was put in touch, the woman I didn't know recently from Canada, who had just recently been diagnosed, and so yeah, in our conversation, I wasn't about telling her what to do or not to do. All I encouraged her to do was, I just said, you know what's right for you, and just whatever that is, do it. And you've got people who are going to tell you should do this, you should do that, you should do this. And just be in your heart and choose the path that works for you, and know that there is a higher reason you have this, and how you walk through it with grace you are participating in changing the consciousness of cancer yourself.
Wow. So, as you faced this, there was probably a point in time where your thoughts, all the advice of people, your judgments, that things were really loud,
Mm-hmm.
and confusing. How did all that get sorted out?
Well, what's funny about that, um, I had things that were very loud in my head, but it wasn't because of advice from anybody else, because that capable one was
Yeah.
going to say, I know what's right for me.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
It may have
Yeah.
not been,
Many of us don't have that. Many of us are like we're looking. Yeah, I'll be able to edit that out.
Okay.
But many of us are like looking for somebody to say something that's going to make sense. But
I wasn't listening to anybody. No, what I picked wasn't necessarily the right thing, but no, I wasn't going to listen to anybody but me.
Yeah.
But was very loud for a very long time was fear. Fear. I to the point where I can't live like this, because for a long time it was fear. Is it going to go away? Is it going to go away? Is it going to go away? What do I need to do to get it to go away? And then when it was gone that first time,
Yeah.
I mean, I remember having a lumpectomy going, then finally I'll have peace from this fear. So then when it's gone, is it going to come back? 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 And then finally, when it did come back, it's like, oh my God, am I going to die? Am I going to die? Am I going to die? And it was relentless.
Yeah.
And fortunately, as time's gone on, and particularly through Paul Selig and his work, the fear creates more fear. Just the fear itself, it's designed to create more fear. And once you can begin to face your fears so they are not scary, then they go away. And that's what's happened for me in the last 6 to, 8-10 months. And one of them was the idea of you may die.
Mm-hmm.
And when that's no longer fearful, then a lot of the others aren't as big as far as thought forms. So it was the fear, not listening to people's advice, that was occupying my mind.
Sure. And that'll take up a lot of real estate.
Oh boy, did it take up a lot of real estate.
So how, in your experience, how did that start to diminish? How was it dismantled for you to be able to get to a place of quiet?
Facing them.
Mm-hmm.
Also under realizing, I think bigger than that is realizing that they aren't, they're lies.
Mm.
And I would say that more than facing them, because in a lot of ways, once I understood that fear was like this entity of itself, every spiritual book you read says there's no such thing.
Right.
It's love. Fear is like a made up. I mean, they're real to us because they hurt and they take up a lot of real estate. But starting to put fear in this place of, it's a construct based on my history. It's not real. And not giving it power. I don't know if that makes sense.
Right.
But, and just facing the death one and not being afraid to die is a biggie.
Yeah, that's huge though. I mean, that's, for the person that's driving across I-90 to go to work in Seattle today at a high rise, how would you encourage them to begin the process of letting that consciousness into their being?
I think a lot of that starts with, you have to really understand what you believe to begin with, and decide whether that works for you or not. Because I don't know that any of us stop. I mean, if you most of our country thinks it's a tragedy to die.
Mm-hmm.
As an example, my mother was sharing the story of a friend of hers, whose sister, who was 79, wasn't feeling well and went to the doctor and found out she had cancer and was dead within 2 weeks. She goes, "Isn't that just so sad?" I go, "Wait a minute. Okay, so she was 79 and she got to live 79 years and then died within 2 weeks." She says, "Yeah." I go, "That's awesome." I go, "That is so, I could be so lucky."
Yeah.
She got to live 79 years and then died rather quickly. How fortunate is she?
Yeah.
But she died though. It's like, isn't that but we all are. And I think that for each of us to say, what do I believe about death? Is it a tragedy? Is it a part of life? What happens to me when I'm gone? It's a lot more painful if you think you're dust. It's a lot more painful if you and people have a right to this belief, but then there's a lot of people who think that when I die, that's it. That I could see why they would be scared to die if they believe that that's the end of themselves. But I don't know. But I think that if each of us were to say, what do I believe about? What are my present views about dying? What happens to me when I'm gone? Do I come back, or is that reincarnation things a bunch of crap?
Yeah.
To spend some time really understanding your beliefs, and then if they scare you, but you still want to believe them, then you know what you need to deal with, the fear of, or are you willing to read some stuff that says, hey, maybe it's different than I currently believe, because quite frankly, the beliefs I have were given to me by somebody else.
Right.
The family I was born into, the culture, the religion I was part of, do they work for you?
Yeah.
So I don't know if that answers it, but
I think it does. Yeah.
But yeah, and so I think my beliefs being that in the eternal nature of our soul, this physical body may die, but who I am really goes on. Makes it a whole lot easier.
Yeah.
Now, if there's anything that I'd still have a little bit of fear left with is, I don't want to be in pain before it happens. The honest truth, if there's one fear I have left, it's, so I better deal with it or it's probably going to happen. But the one fear I probably still need to work with is, and I think on some level, I think that I've probably had lives where I've died pretty painful. So I have a fear of pain before the actual death. That makes me more nervous than dying.
Right.
And I go, yeah, you got drugs for that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, as we wrap things up, this is Light in a Spoon has been something that, we all live this magical life of being able to pour light into a spoon, as one of my favorite Sufi mystics say. And then he goes on to say, and then it's the lifting it to nourish your beautiful parched holy mouth. What I sense and what I receive from you when we talk is your willingness to take the light you are pouring into a spoon and to extend it to other people that are they don't need to be in the experience of cancer, but many people are probably in the experience of some type of disquiet or fear. What are you what are you, as you pour the spoon and you lift it to touch our beautiful parched holy mouths, what would you like to leave us with? Does that make sense?
I think that what I have tried to do, the light in the spoon that I've touched with others, is to see each and every person I come in contact with from that divine nature of who they really are, and to look them in the eyes and go, you are worthy of love, you are worthy of being seen, You're worthy of being heard. And whatever your odyssey is, whatever form it takes, it's no different than mine.
Yeah.
And what I may have come to through mine, let that somehow reach you, even if we never say one word, if I never say one word about it. May the presence that I currently have hopefully do something for you and me in our interactions with one another.
Yeah. Cool. And then just let that ripple out into the world.
And just let that ripple. Yep.
Great. Renee, thanks for your time.
Well, thank you for interviewing me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I love you a lot.
Love you too.
I love your husband.
And I love my husband too.
Yeah, so it's been awesome being part of your life.
Thank you.
So, yeah, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
What a fantastic conversation. I love that woman. I want you to know that in the show notes, you will be able to find a link to Renee's blog. She's a beautiful writer, imaginative, articulate, and wise. That's a wrap for this week. Be the poet. Do a little magic and pour some light into a spoon and then lift it to nourish someone's beautiful parched holy mouth. And then do that every day. If you would, go to iTunes, give us a review. The feedback is important. And we'll be back in another week. Until then, take care. Big love. God bless.